Okay, we're good. Nice. Okay, I'm going to pause it in YouTube. You let me know, Veronica, if we lost anything, because otherwise I'm going to hear myself while we talk. We're live, looks like. Nice. Okay. Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream. We're so happy to have you back on this episode of PredRev Live. We've got quite a panel for you this time. Usually it's like one or two people. This time we got a bunch of experts joining us live to chat about what works and what doesn't in the world of prospecting. So yeah, we've got a bunch of topics that we're going to cover today. We're going to hear from these guys. Just a quick overview of what we're going to go over today. So we know outbound sales is challenging and that the job of an SDR is among the most difficult and the most valuable in the sales org. And in order to run a well-oiled sales machine, you need to create a high-performing SDR team, which then feeds your AEs, account managers, all that with steady flow of high-quality meetings and demos. So in this episode of PredRev Live, we're going to discuss the various elements that make up an SDR's top-performing activities and the importance of implementing proven strategies and tactics overall across that predictable sales stream. So we're going to talk about cold calling, cold email, follow-ups, and handoffs to AEs. So just to start off, let's go round and have a little intro and tell us where you come from. I'm just going to follow my order on with Regina.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. Well, yes, I am currently an SDR manager in predictable revenue. I started in the company over a year and a half ago now. I started as an SDR and then transitioned into the SDR team lead role. And now like I mentioned, I'm currently an SDR manager, and it's been challenging, a very rewarding job. And it's just, you never know what's going to happen in SDR's life. So yeah, really nice.
Thank you, Regina. And let's go Gabrielle next.
All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Gabrielle Rgb. I've been managing SDR teams for the better part of the past 3 or 4 years now. I started off as an SDR, but an AE, did sales enablement as well. But yeah, definitely found my passion in leading sales development. I was most recently with Gong.io, and I'm getting ready to start a new gig on Monday. So more on that. You'll see it on the LinkedIn wave. So
nice. Yeah. So exciting. Congrats on that, Gabrielle. And just Sweet, let's hear from you.
Great. Hey, hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is just Sweet. Same as Regina, I started in predictable revenue over a year and a half ago. I started as an SDR first, then transitioned into team lead role. And now I'm an SDR manager as well. So yeah, it's been challenging and interesting. You never stop learning. Every day is something new, and it's very, very exciting. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you, just Sweet. And Mark.
Hey. So I'm the CMO at Bluebirds, and here at Bluebirds, the SDR team is part of the marketing team, and that's the reason why I'm managing SDRs. And I've been doing this for about 4 or 5 years, because at my previous company, Redpoints, I was also managing the enterprise SDR team. So yeah, pretty much like almost all of you, I also started as an SDR about 7 years ago. So yeah, happy to be here.
Nice, thank you. And I realized my camera cut off, so I'll put my face back out here in the mix. But I am Sarah Hicks. I'm your host for this PredRev Live. Same story as these guys, came up through the SDR role, became an SDR manager, and now more recently have joined our coaching consulting team to help people build out that internal outbound engine. But you're going to hear mostly from these guys for today. So why don't we dive right into our first topic? I'd love to hear from each of you. I'll kind of pick on each of you so no one has to figure out when to talk. But our first topic is cold calling. So what works in terms of best practices, thinking about, what works best just in terms of best practices before we dive into some real tangible examples. Give me a sense of what you think works best. Let's hear from you, Mark. You're on mute.
Sorry, I missed the last part. We're going to talk about cold calling now?
Yes, cold calling, just kind of what you have learned works best as kind of best practice rules of thumb.
Yeah, so very aligned with what I have when it comes about cold emailing as well. I don't think I'm going to say anything that hasn't been said yet, as all of you know. About when it comes to prospecting, sales development, B2B sales, there's a lot out there, like webinars, ebooks, guides, and everything. So, but something that we've seen working quite well lately is sorry, I thought I missed my connection. I think there's this misconception that when your cold calling is not working, you need to change your value prop. You need to change the way you deliver the value prop. So something that we've seen lately is the fact that before changing your value prop, before changing the way you deliver pains, you better make sure that you're talking to people. I know it sounds obvious, but the main challenge is about connecting with people. The main challenge is about to be heard or to be read when it comes to email. So the first thing that I would say is, before getting straight to the way you deliver the value prop, or getting straight to the way you deliver the pains to your prospects, I would say you better craft and nail first the 5-6 words or the first 20 seconds. And I have some examples, but I think that this comes later, right?
Yeah, in a little bit. We'll touch on examples in a sec. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is pretty much what I wanted to say, that I see so many SDRs and SDR managers going so fast to change the value prop and changing the pains, and not spending so much time on changing the first 5 or 6 words, which is at the end of the day one of the main challenges, which is to be heard or to be read when it comes to it.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Regina?
Yeah, absolutely. And something else that I think is very important is always having sort of a script, but not relying on it like 100%. And yeah, it's very, very important for you to get to know really your service, your product, the industry that you're working on. So it's good to have something for, when the prospect doesn't want to say any other words. So yeah, just being able to go off script as well, and not panic whenever they actually want to have a conversation and ask you something else. So yeah, it's just about nailing, like Mark said, what your first words, but then as well being able to have that conversation.
Right. So having something like tried and true, but also having the confidence and the sort of like
Exactly.
adaptability to be able to have a normal conversation when you do stray off script. Yeah, makes sense. Jasvi, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it also it comes for being prepared for what is unexpected. So for instance, when a prospect asks something like off script, the SDR should be ready and have the product knowledge to kind of pivot that conversation, to listen, to really pay attention to what they're saying. Most of the SDRs kind of reply to win the conversation or to kind of overcome the objection, but they don't hear the real pain. And sometimes they are not well aware of the product, like what are the product they're offering. So that kind of creates a confusion, or they might lose that opportunity because they're not listening well.
What do you recommend as practice that an SDR, if they're listening now and they're like, oh, I get caught in that trap myself, what should they do to learn how to not do that and kind of do what you're suggesting?
Yeah, that's kind of tricky. One thing that I have recommended my SDRs is to mute themselves. Like whenever they're on the phone, mute. So if they feel like they're talking, they're muted, and the prospect will continue talking, and that will force them to listen. So, and then a bunch of role plays. Role plays always help on that. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for all your input. And Gabrielle, I know you've got some kind of hard examples to suggest with our listeners here. So what's your take on cold calling and what works?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can share high level what I think works or what I've seen work and what I think doesn't work. And then I'll also share an example of a way to launch the call. And so I very much agree with Mark's assessment of the first 20 seconds of the call are make or break. That's really where you establish foundation from which a conversation can actually occur. So the example that I'll give is really focused on that. But some of the key notes that I wrote down of what works, I think number one is keeping the prospect engaged. It'd be really easy for us, especially if we're expected to go off of a script, just to stay on script, to pitch people's ears off, and it becomes a very one-way conversation versus actually bringing that person into the conversation. Another thing that I think about is providing value. A lot of the value that you can provide to someone on a cold call is going to come from asking clarifying questions. So to the point of if someone's asking a question or if they say something and you don't know, that's a great time to go, hey, listen, I'm not familiar with that term. It might be very jargony. So taking a moment to go, what does this mean for you? What does it look like for you? tell me more, because as that person shares a bit more about what's going on in their world, that's where you can actually have an illustration of how your solution or how your service can be very valuable to them. Knowing your customer stories and your use cases becomes incredibly important for this. And then I think another big piece here is empathizing with that person. So again, rather than just trying to like overcome objections, really let that person know that you heard them. Someone's like, hey, listen, I don't really have time right now. Hey, sounds like I caught you at a bad time. I hear you, you're heard. Like, I want you to bring your guards down with me. And in doing that, you allow that person to become that much more engaged. So I'm going to stop rattling off a bunch of things that these to me are, that's like the people side of having a conversation, but getting into a specific example. And I'll walk through a framework that I use. And so this is something that I've used since I was an SDR. So this is 2015. This is what helped me hit like 200% of my quota. This is what's helped me manage a bunch of different teams that are hitting 100% and above. Is, again, we want to focus on the first 20 seconds of the conversation and making sure that we are doing, like, there's a few things that we really want to do. We really want to launch a conversation. And so the 4 steps that you can follow to do that can be, first and foremost, have an introduction, something as simple as, hey, Regina, my name's Gabrielle, right? I'm reaching out to you. Here's my name. Have a relevant statement. This is going to be informed by the research that you're doing. This to me is what builds credibility. This is when you're calling someone and they go, oh, you meant to reach me. Got it. And this is relevant to me. Got it. I'll stay on the phone. The value that you, there's a value statement that you'll have as well, which will signal to that person, like, it gives them a reason to stay on the phone. It's not enough just to have a really pretty script. Like, you have to have some level of value based off of what their responsibilities are, based on the research that you're doing. And this lets the person know, okay, I should stay on this conversation because it's not only relevant, but it's worth my time. And the last piece of this is the launch, right? So I think one of the biggest things that I see not work well, like gives me cringes, is when we just start pitching out of nowhere for 2 minutes. Rather, instead, I want you to engage that person within 20 to 30 seconds. I want this person to be talking. And that's when launching the conversation through asking a question becomes very pivotal at that time. So a couple bonus points are, instead of just asking, hey, is this relevant to you? Yes or no. Are you responsible for this? Yes or no. Ask a more insightful question that is open-ended. So the example that I gave, and this is going off of, let's say, gongs, the main thing, there's many different use cases, but I would say the core value of gong is you can have better insight into what's really going on in your frontline conversations. And with that, you can coach a lot better. You can identify pain points, or you can pinpoint like where people are messing up, or maybe even pinpoint where people are finding some opportunities and taking advantage of that. So the introduction could be as simple as this. Hey, Sarah, this is Gabrielle. The relevant statement is, and looking at the growth at ABC company, well, I'd mistype some, but looking at how your company has grown, your sales team, and seeing your involvement in enabling improved performance across your reps, I thought it made sense to reach out to you. We have a solution that makes identifying indicators of success and failure a lot easier and better. So it's a value statement, just whatever you're doing, we're making it easier and better. And so help me understand, how are you going about this today? I'm not trying to win you over right away. I really just want to ask a question to see, what is your current landscape? What's the situation right now? Because if I don't know what the landscape is and what the situation is right now, I can't really tell you what will be more valuable or what will be less valuable for you, or if we're a really good fit. So this to me would be an example of a cold call launch or cold call script. I used to call it the gambit. That, again, the whole point is we just want to get someone talking. We're not trying to get them to book a meeting right away.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is such a great, like, easy to follow the guide, the 4-step launch process. And you and I had talked about it on a podcast before, and full disclosure, it's going to come out in a piece of our content coming up soon. And you're named and credited in that, because I think it is one of the ways that's so simple to kind of understand. And yeah, so thank you for sharing that with us. And just for one other quick minute here before we dive into emails, I'd love to hear from you guys if you think there are any like hard no's, like the opposite side, like what is just not a good idea over cold call, and feel free to shout them out.
I would just say pitching, which is something that Gabrielle said, like just going into your pitch and this is what I know. And yeah, they might not even be listening to you. So it's a conversation for them to have with you, not you to, it's not your monologue.
Mark, you look like you're thinking of something.
Yeah, no, for me, I was going to say that I know that sometimes we like to say that, yeah, you got to be more pushy or you got to be persistent and everything. But I would say that once you said that you had to say, once you have delivered the value prop, if they're not interested, they're not interested. Obviously, it depends on the market. Sometimes you might be so confident that your solution or your software is going to solve all their problems. But I don't think we gotta be too pushy. I think it's not good for anyone. So once you have delivered your value prop and explained your solution, if they say no, I think it's time to stop. And also, even if you haven't done it, if they want to talk to you, you gotta respect that. So I would say not pushing too much.
Yeah.
Oh, I
guess the
disagree
caveat
with
to
that.
is, I would say, I knew that you would disagree. And I was going to say, I guess
I
the
disagree
caveat to
with
that
that.
is that you shouldn't, as long as you haven't ever pitched until you have uncovered the true pain. Like if you have approached this right and you've only opened up the conversation, asked them those digging questions, and you've sort of almost kind of pre-qualified them as a fit, uncovered the pain and said, now here's how we could solve it. Then if they're like, you know what, I actually don't want that, then maybe you're, yeah, like, okay, you're right. There's other people I could call. But if you definitely like connect and pitch, then you've got other work to do after that.
Yeah,
No, so go ahead.
okay, so not to make this a whole debate. I think the pitch by itself is it's not valuable to anybody but the seller. Like no one cares about the pitch at all. And so I think like if we make everything reliant on the pitch, we're going to be shooting ourselves in the foot and we're going to be missing out on a lot of opportunities. That being said, though, you do have to give someone some insight into what you're doing, but you want to make sure that you're tailoring your pitch based off of what's going on in their world. So asking a lot of questions, clarifying questions, discovery questions becomes super duper important. So it's not like hey, like hard no's, but I guess my hard no would be giving up too easily. So if someone's, hey, I'm not interested, it's not to say that you just give up, but it's more so like, I totally understand that. I'm really trying to figure out whatever your reason. You can ask them like, hey, walk me through what's keeping you from being interested today. It's not to say that you're trying to like slap them across like if someone says I'm not interested, don't try and repitch them with the same pitch, right? But ask some clarifying questions.
Right. Yeah, I think those are two good sides of the argument there. Let's talk about cold email. So same thing. I'd love to hear from each of you. We'll kind of go in a different order this time, but tell me about best practices. What does work for cold email? And I'll start with you.
Sure. I would think like the key would be like do it short and sweet, like to the point, like avoid, like long pitches or like using like too many technical words. So just like start it casual, direct to the point. Like, this is why I'm reaching out. This is why you should care about it. Let's meet. Like, I think that it's something like key. Keep it short, simple, and sweet.
Cool. What do you think, Regina?
Yeah, and also like not forgetting that the focus is on the prospect, not your solution as well. But yeah, as long as it's short, and also don't use all of your cards in the first email. Don't add all of the information that's for the demo or what you're trying to book. So yeah, not adding too much information.
What do you think, Gabrielle?
I was just gonna say, like, I 100% agree with Jesui and Regina on keep it short and sweet. Don't like show them all your cards. The only other thing that I would share on there is edit after the fact, and also recognize that a lot of folks are using their mobile devices to read email. So like one practical tip is draft your email, send it to yourself, read it on your cell phone, and if it doesn't fit within just that screen, it's too long. So that would be like, that's like the one thing that I think works really, really well is going back editing and also optimizing for mobile.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We just did that with one of my clients. Because considering, you've also got to fit the body of the email on the phone screen, but at the same time, that the preview, whether it's on your browser or your mobile, shows you like subject line and some bit of the first sentence, kind of depending on length of subject line and all that kind of stuff. So testing that as well, knowing that you've got this preview length of words to grip that person enough to click that email. If you say, hey, so-and-so, I'm just following up on the email that I sent you last, already not going to answer it. But if it comes in with something relevant, it's going to be so much more impactful and more likely to get that open. And then of course, got to follow the best practices that these guys have mentioned once you're open. What do you think, Mark, best practices wise? Yeah, no, I mean, I'm totally agree with about you got to keep it short, concise.
And also, there's one thing that I try to use, which is something that Dave Gerhardt always say, which is to write as you talk. For some reason, especially ones that come from marketing, try to use fancy words like optimize, increase, and there are so many of these words that I think not work on emails. So yeah, I like the fact that avoid technical words. But also, I think, as I said earlier, for cold calling, I think one of the biggest challenges when it comes to LinkedIn messages and emails is that people don't go through the whole email. And I always say the same thing when training and coaching SDRs, that it's funny if you go through your LinkedIn inbox or your email inbox, if you go and check all the emails or LinkedIn messages from unknown people, if you go through all of them and see how many of them you've read, like the whole email, there are not so many. There are actually just a few. You usually read the first 5 or 6 words, sometimes the sender and the subject when it comes to emails. And sometimes if you don't know the person and it doesn't seem that it's going to be relevant, you just stop reading. And I think the main reasons why this happens, the main 2 problems that hold people back from keep reading are, first of all, when you see it's not relevant, and then when you see it's too salesy. And when I say not relevant, I see when you see that instead of being 1-to-1, you see that it's 1 too many. And I have some examples that I would like to show, but when you see things like increase website traffic, stuff and things like that, this might be personalized. But the thing is that if I see this and I don't keep reading, no matter how good your value prop, no matter how good your pitch is, and how your product can be amazing and it can be the perfect fit, that if I don't read it, I'm gonna miss it. I'm gonna be missing an amazing opportunity of have the best product on my tech stack. So I'm gonna search some emails that I've used emails, both emails and LinkedIn messages. Do you see PowerPoint? Yes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there are a few ways to avoid sounding too salesy and being perceived as not relevant. So I select a few that I like. One, for example, is we do this a lot, mentioning with some name dropping, right? When I say name dropping, I mean, it can be a colleague. So people think that being personalized, it's just about changing your name, company name, and job title, which is something that everyone knows nowadays that can be automated. I'm talking about maybe what this guy did, right? Hey, Mark, I spoke with Tony, who's a colleague of mine, a few days ago about. So the first thing that he's doing is, I don't know the value prop yet. I don't know the message. I don't know the solution. I don't know the pitch, but I'm going to click and I'm going to read it. I'm going to keep reading. Pretty much the same with that other message here, the second one. So you're currently hiring a marketing manager, and this cannot be automated. I mean, I'm sure at some point there will be things that automate this kind of stuff, but nowadays at least it's not that easy. And here I have a good one and a bad example. For example, let's say that I work for bookme.com, and I see a message like this: how Calendly SDRs book so many meetings. Hey, Mark, I was chatting to the sales manager at Calendly. If I worked for the Calendly competitor, and that's what I meant when I said some name dropping, at least I'm going to open this. Then maybe I don't like the solution. Then maybe, I don't know, I'm a Calendly client and I'm so happy with them and I'm going to change. But at least whoever's sending this has overcome the main challenge, which is me reading at least 80% of the email. And that's what I would consider the opposite, right? Get more traffic and increase web conversions. See how your website can generate 10 times more traffic. Maybe the bad thing about this is that maybe this is personalized. Maybe whoever wrote this spent 1 hour writing the email, doing the research and crafting the best email possible. But the first 5 words, the subject, what I see here is that this is not 1-to-1. This is what I think. This is 1 too many. This is salesy. And this is the main reasons why I'm not gonna keep reading. I'm not saying that this happens in all industries, but in general, we are way too busy to read all the emails that we get, all the LinkedIn messages that we get. So this is something that I think is important to keep in mind. First of all, write as you speak, not too technical and not trying to use the fanciest words. And then also to make sure that in the first line, first sentence, at this, you gotta let them know that this is only made for them. So this is 1-to-1. And I think, as I said, there are a few ways. There's just some examples mentioning a colleague, maybe mentioning a competitor. And it doesn't have to be a client, I would say. You can mention a client in a ambiguous enough way that to let them know that, okay, if I work for bookme.com and I see a message like this, how can the SDRs book so many meetings? Obviously, there's a small chance that it was the SDR who wrote this was lucky, but most likely they did some name dropping, and I would like to keep reading. So these would be probably the things that I always try to keep in mind. And again, as I said earlier, before changing your whole pitch, before changing the whole way you deliver the value prop, before make sure first that your emails are being read, and it's not a problem with the first part.
Cool. Yeah, great examples. I want to do like rapid fire round, one sentence on what you should not do with cold email. I want to pick on you, Regina, first. One sentence, bad stuff.
I would just like piggyback on what we all mentioned. I feel like about all the information on your email and lack of personalization. I understand not wanting to spend 10 minutes in just one email for one person, and you still have a bunch more. But yeah, I would say like if you find something relevant, use it. If not, yeah, it's going to be too salesy and pretty obvious.
Just sweet.
I would say starting your emails with, I hope this email finds you well.
Nice.
That is so no best practice. So
Cool.
yeah.
Cool.
Well, thanks for accepting my connection. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think.
Yes.
Gabrielle, what do you think?
This goes back to like double checking your work. I think one of the worst things is when you send an email and it has like the wrong company or the wrong name, or like the signature is not actually you because you grabbed somebody else's template. So just like paying attention to the little things.
Nice. And what's your one top pet peeve, Mark?
Sorry?
What's your one top like no-go with email?
I was gonna say the one that you just said, but not with the same words. But starting because at least the way this happened to me, the way I see these emails when they start with thanks for accepting my connection, I hope you're doing well, my name is X and I work for, I immediately stop reading. So I'm using sentences like this one, that would be top no.
Perfect. Let's move into follow-ups. So now we're talking about not the initial email, maybe not the first cold call. We're talking about keeping the engagement going over some period of time with like a sequence or however you go about that. So once again, let's talk best practices. I've got one question from the audience that I want to kind of incorporate here, and it's around how many times do you try to reach out to a prospect before giving up? So as I go around with the best practices, if you guys can give your take on that one as well. I'm going to start with Regina this time. What do you think? Best practices for follow-ups and how long you should do it?
So for follow-ups, depends on if they haven't opened an email or answered any of your calls, or if there's an objection there, they actually respond to all of your emails and then it's obvious that they didn't even read it. No, thank you, whatever. So yeah, I would say just again, so for the fact, if they haven't opened any of your emails, just if it's a first follow-up, I would just do it on a thread, same subject line as the last one. If not, trying something a bit more simple. It doesn't have to be relevant to what you're trying to sell, or if you, like something around maybe bad timing or something catchy. Sometimes they like humor, depending on the industry that you're reaching for. So yeah, I would say something like that.
Cool. And we'll go Mark next. What do you think? What are best practices for follow-ups?
There are two best practices that we always try to incorporate here, not only at Bluebirds, but I think some of them are useful for many companies. One is when you have obviously that depends on the type you're prospecting, but prospecting more than one lead at the same time. Some people keep being super pushy with one lead, and sometimes you don't even, especially when it comes to sophisticated products or innovative solutions, you're not 100% sure who's going to be your target persona. So instead of executing a cadence with only one lead, I would say sometimes the best follow-up is just reaching out to someone else who might be more accessible and being completely honest. Like, hey, I wouldn't be so insistent if I didn't think that was useful, but I've been trying to reach out to Sarah, for example, and I couldn't get her on the phone. So maybe you can help me. So this is a honest follow-up that I've seen working. And then the other thing that I forgot, I forgot the second. Yeah, it's actually a no. It's a top no. So I'm gonna say that for later because it's something that
Perfect.
that I think we should do.
Cool. Gabrielle, best things for follow-ups.
Yeah, I would highly encourage, if you can, to tailor follow-ups based off what's going on at that prospect's company or in their world, or based off of some information they gave you, especially if you had a conversation with them in the past. So like, even in answering the question of like how many times do you try to reach your prospect before giving up, I said this on a podcast where my rules are basically like, it's a yes, like they're interested until they threaten to reach out to my CEO. Like that's kind of the level of intensity that I can bring, but I also want to make it very valuable at the same time too. So this can look like maybe my first wave of emails is, or my first sequence can be 15 touches across 31 days, across 3 to 4 different channels, 6 emails, for example. Then I wait a month, and then I do a second wave of follow-ups. And so this sequence might look more like, hey, here's something that's going on at your account, or like, hey, there's some based off of what you're posting on LinkedIn, I thought these kind of articles might be really helpful and really insightful for you. Knowing that second wave of follow-up emails might be actually where I booked the meeting. But you also see people who say like, hey, reach out to me in 6 months. And so that kind of follow-up might look like 1 or 2 emails per month for 6 months, just to make sure that I stay top of mind and top of their inbox. So those are, I kind of just do whatever it takes until they become very, very, very angry at me.
Fair enough. And Jasui, what about you?
Yeah, I would say acknowledge what the prospect is saying and kind of personalize your answer to that, and also keep it in a neutral tone. Like you don't want to be too pushy in saying like, yeah, let's meet. I don't care if you don't have time, or like they say like reach out Monday, and then you reach out Friday and say like, hey, by any chance are you free? Like we don't want to do that. But also we don't want to be too friendly and saying like, no, it's okay. Whenever you're free, just let me know, reach out to me, and, like letting them go so easy. So just keep it like, acknowledge what they're saying, say like, okay, I hear you, like keep that empathy going on. And then like reply and say like, okay, I'll make a note and reach out by this time. So kind of creates a commitment with them, that piece.
Nice. And I know, Regina, you've got some examples of follow-ups that have worked. So why don't you share those with us?
Yeah, I have one that has been working very good amongst many projects, that it was actually crafted by one of our SDRs, but Florencia. I'm just going to read it. It's very simple. It is something related to what Jasui mentioned about empathy and acknowledging what they're going through. So this is if they had a solution, for example, already for what you're offering, which is just like, hi, it's great to hear that you have your needs covered. However, the reason for my outreach was not to try and get you out of your current solution at this time. All I want to do is open a new door. And then before worrying about anything else, I'd like to show you how our solution works. So once you're ready to explore alternatives, you have my information in the back of your pocket. And then just at the end, trying once more, like if you're available this week, or are you available this week for a 20-minute chat with my account executive or my specialist? So something where you're actually acknowledging what they are going through, if they already have a solution, and you understand why they wouldn't like reach out to you for a new one. They don't have any plans to replace it. But yeah, and it has really worked, and we've gotten a lot of meetings out of that copy.
Nice. Very cool. And we have time for another one if you want to share one of your other follow-up examples. I see you got a couple in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just for example, this is something more of like the bad timing, what's going on, and it's just like I've been trying to get a hold of you and gather your thoughts about us. My intention is not to be innocent of myself, but that being said, I'd be doing myself and a company that is if I just give up, which is something I always tell my SDRs, like, you don't have to be scared of the prospect and being all apologetic because you're interrupting while they're working. This is also your job. You're working, and that's something that you that you have to do.
Nice. Very cool. Let's do a little quick round of the like no-go in a follow-up. Do not do this in a follow-up. I'm going to start Gabrielle.
Ooh, do not do this in a follow. I am not a huge fan of the any thoughts email. It's a little bit too broad. And so my recommendation back to it could be, I'd say just expand it a little bit more. It could be something as simple as, hey, it could be something as simple as, no, I sent you this email a few days ago. Not sure if you saw it. I'd love to get your feedback on it, or to see if there's anything that might have resonated with you if I missed the mark. So I don't know, because I think that any thoughts email is just so overused.
Yeah, fair enough. Just what do you think is a no-go?
I would say being too apologetic, or also like on the other side, making the prospect feel guilty about it, like for not replying to you.
Nice. Yeah. Mark?
Yeah, that the fact of making the prospect feel guilty, I don't think it's a good practice. And also, I would say avoiding making too obvious that you're following up. I know that sometimes can be useful with if well done, but sometimes what I feel is like if I didn't get back to you the first time, why would I do it now, right? So in the first sentence that I read is, hey, following up on the email that I sent yesterday. First thing I'm gonna think is like, okay, that's an email that I got yesterday. I was not interested. Why would I be interested now? So yeah, I would say not making feel the prospect guilty, and not making too obvious that you're desperate following up.
Nice. And final thoughts from you on like a no-go, Regina?
I would say if they said something like, no, thank you, or already have a solution, it's just like not following up. That would be, I would say, just respond to any email that you have. Don't just forget about them. You don't know if that no, thank you will be able to convert into a handoff.
Nice. Kind of like Gabrielle's don't give up. It's a yes until it's like a hard
yeah.
no.
Until they unsubscribe or block
no.
you. Yeah.
Nice. Cool. Well, the last topic that we wanted to cover here is handoffs. So this one, we're going to spend a little bit less time. There's not as much content obviously around this. So I think we should rather start with the examples of the handoffs that do work and best practices there, and from just so that we get the good stuff right away.
Yeah, so I think communication between all the three parties involved is important. Like the communication between the SDR, the AE, and the prospect. Like alignment between the channels we're going to connect. And the email that you send to do the introduction has to be clear and short, just a brief note saying like, okay, the three of us will meet. Also, the SDR should mention that either if the meeting was booked over the phone or over by email, they have to be clear they're looping in someone else. So that will create that friction, saying like, who is this third person joining in? Like, I thought it was just going to be you and me. So that is something I have like for what it's like a good practice for it. And also the SDR needs to have like a internal conversation with the AE before and saying like, hey, they asked these questions. This is what I got. Like, passing all the notes, the low points, the highlights. So that way when they meet, they don't be like repetitive and the AE asking the same questions. And it's kind of interesting. Last week I found a poll on LinkedIn about this, and prospects were kind of expressing their feelings about this process, the misalignment between the AEs and the SDRs, how awkward is it, and how they feel like it's a waste of time when they are not like kind of aligned on that piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely a huge friction point. And especially like you're saying, if people don't understand that that's the process, like I think we all know in like B2B SaaS, there's the SDR AE model, and we're like pretty comfortable with that, but we can forget that there are some industries that have like one sales rep, a field sales rep or whatever, or just a full cycle sales rep, and they're not used to necessarily being handed off. So yeah, what are the recommendations you think? What do you do, Gabrielle, to like prepare the prospect to know that if all goes well, they're having a conversation with someone else?
Yeah, I think something as simple as using an agenda in the calendar invite can be really helpful. And you can make it a template, like make it as simple as, hey, thanks so much for the conversation. Here are a few things that we reviewed today, like bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. Just a heads up, you'll be meeting with my colleague, Mark, and he'll be able to walk you through a little bit more, answer some questions as well. And, if there's anything else that pops up, let me know. So I feel like the use of an agenda can be really, really helpful. in parallel with sharing over, like if you're booking meetings over the phone of like, hey, just like, here's what to expect. You'll be meeting with my colleague, Mark. This is their role. Here's why you're meeting with them, those kind of things. So my piece would be use an agenda wisely.
Yep. Nice. Cool. What do you think? Actually, you know what? I'm going to ask one of the questions that we've got from the chat here. So we have a question. How do you balance quality over quantity when prospecting in terms of like spending too much time researching, personalization? How do you balance that? And we'll hear from the two people that I didn't just talk to about those things there. So we'll start with Regina.
I would say no, like have a process for the quality that you want to have, and then don't spend too much time. If you cannot find that information, just don't spend too much time, and then also don't try and use something different, you know, like you really want to talk to this prospect, but they don't have any information on their LinkedIn page, only that they like basketball. If it has nothing to do with what you're trying to say, there's no need to use that. So I would say, yeah, like just have like a, I don't know, like 3-minute rule where if you don't find anything worth using to reach out to them, don't use it.
What do you think, Mark, on that one? How do you balance the quantity and quality?
Yeah, I would say to keep a healthy trade-off between quantity and quality. I would say the best way to do this, because it's a really, for us, one important metric that we try to track is activity. So how many, it's not like we want it because the SDRs are going to be compensated on the amount of calls or the amount of emails. But I would say if you are supposed to be prospecting, let's say 25 companies a week, and me as an SDR, I'm supposed to be managing my time. And let's say, okay, that's 5 companies a day. I'm gonna do as much research as I can, as long as I can prospect 5 companies a day. So I would say it obviously depends on the industry. There are some industries where finding information is way too hard, right? Mm-hmm. So, but let's say that I'm selling to SaaS, I'm selling to the software industry. There are so many things that you can find. It may be like traffic. It can be, I don't know, the people they're hiring. So I would say setting some activity metrics, like the ones I said, the amount of leads to prospect per day or the amount of companies to prospect per day or per week. I would say I would just leave the SDR decide and manage their own time and be like, okay, if I can do this research and still reaching the activity targets, then I'm fine. If not, I'm going to have to either speed up the process or do less research.
Nice. Totally makes sense. Well, we're at just a few minutes before the end of time here. Thank you so much for joining us, all of you guys joining us on the panel and walking through those best practices. I know it was like rapid fire. We really like tried to cover a lot of ground to make sure it was like the most value packed 45 minutes or whatever, 30 minutes, whatever it was that anyone here has ever experienced. And let's go around and talk about if people want to learn more from you, if they want to like, you know, see your content, learn about, more of the things that you can teach them. How can they do that? And I'm going to start on the top left of my screen, which is Mark. Where can people get in touch with you?
I would say LinkedIn. I don't have a site or I have nothing. So I guess LinkedIn would be the best option to reach out to me. And I'm not really posting that much, but yeah, I would say LinkedIn would be the best way to reach out to me.
Nice. Regina?
Same as Mark. I'm not as active on LinkedIn, but I would say like that's the best option.
Just sweet.
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best option. Just reach out, send like a brief note. I'm happy to chat. Yeah.
And Gabrielle?
Yeah, LinkedIn for me as well. So it's Gabrielle Rgb Blackwell. I try to do my best to respond back to messages, but if you double tap, message me twice, I'll respond.
Nice. Perfect. Well, thank you all of you guys for joining us on this episode of PredRev Live. Thank you to the audience. Thank you to the couple of people who asked those questions. If you have more questions, feel free to shoot them. You can like leave them in the YouTube comments. We check that stuff. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn and ask those questions. And if these guys are out there busy doing their thing, I can always dig in and see if I can find those answers for you. But yeah, thank you so much. Thanks to everyone for joining. We'll catch you next time.
Bye. See you.
Yeah, thank you.